What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another UFC video. This time it is Abu Dhabi's full card recap. It just finished up about 30 minutes ago, and I'm going to go over all the fights that went down, what happened in them to the best of my memory. And we ended up going 9-4 on picks tonight, which is a great comeback. A bounce back, I should say, in comparison to our last three events. So it was nice to get back into the W column, I guess. It's a weird way to say it, but the only things we got wrong this week were underdogs, and it wasn't too bad. So let's go over all the fights. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and comment down below with your thoughts on what you thought about UFC Abu Dhabi. Now, starting off the card was Cedric Dumas against Denis Tiuliulin, and we knew this was going to be a low-level fight. Neither of these guys are all-stars in MMA fighting, but I picked Cedric to get this done because I do not think beyond power Denis Tiuliulin has actual fighting skills. And honestly, it wasn't really a good look for Cedric. He did end up getting the decision victory, but if you're not finishing Denis Tiuliulin in the UFC right now, you are not showing much. You're not showing much promise. He didn't really do a hell of a lot. He did have some decent jabs up the middle that seemed to affect Tiuliulin throughout the fight, but Tiuliulin, in typical Tiuliulin fashion, just comes forward like a zombie, doesn't care if he gets hit, and he actually was able to garner some control time on Cedric Dumas throughout this fight as well, which is a terrible look. I'm still yet to be impressed by Dumas, even though he is now 3-2 in the UFC. Hopefully he can evolve his game. Both guys seemed to gas out as well. So nevertheless, we ended up starting off the night with a dub. Poor performance from both of these men. Cedric ends up getting the win. Second fight of the night was Herbert against Rolando Bedoya, and Bedoya is now 0-3 in his UFC career. He has tricked us. He has hoodwinked us. He has bamboozled us into believing that he is a solid fighter with that Chaos Williams short notice performance. He comes in here and loses a decision to Herbert. Now, my breakdown for this fight, I picked Bedoya because of the volume aspect. Bedoya, in his two previous UFC fights, he eclipsed 100 significant strikes in both of those fights, and he's going up against Herbert, who's landed the most he's ever landed in a UFC fight in his career is 49. But to my surprise, in this fight, Herbert kept up with the volume, and he was landing the more impactful shots. He was landing the more visually appealing shots. Bedoya was cracking out some whipping leg kicks, which seemed to affect Herbert, slowed him down a little bit throughout the fight, but Herbert was just levels above in the striking in terms of boxing. His timing was, he was timing his strikes well. He was the faster boxer, and he had great movement. He did slow down a little bit in the movement wise because of those leg kicks, but he ended up dropping Bedoya in that first round, which to me kind of swayed the decision into his favor. It was still a close fight. It was a decent fight as well. It was lots of action throughout, both throughout some good volume, but ultimately Herbert got it done. Bedoya is now 0-3. Who knows if he has a career left in the UFC right now. The Contender Series is around the corner, and this is typically where Dana starts trimming the roster and cutting some fighters to make room for the new signees. So 0-3 is not a good look for Bedoya. Herbert gets back in the W column. We are 1-1 on the night so far. Next up, Victoria Dudakova against Sam Hughes. Sam Hughes gets the upset and gives Dudakova her first professional MMA loss, and we actually picked Sam Hughes. This was one of the underdogs that we picked for this evening to get it done. And despite the loss, Dudakova she seemed to have made improvements in her game. She's only 25 years old, still very green in MMA, but her hands looked crisp early. She was the one that ended up getting some takedowns early on as well against a fighter like Sam Hughes, who is gritty, who is typically the one that pushes the pace and gets her own takedowns. So that first round, that opening round, Dudakova looked great. She looked sharp on the feet. Her wrestling was on point as well. But as the fight progressed, Sam Hughes, in typical Sam Hughes fashion, just started grinding and wearing down Dudakova. Hughes weaponizes her cardio in her fights and is able to make her opponents work, and that's exactly what she did against Dudakova. She was able to snag rounds 2 and 3 and get the win. In that second round, she was She ended off the round really strong. It seemed like Dudakova was gassed. It seemed like she was like, I don't want to say almost out of there, not really like wobbled or anything, but she looked exhausted. Sam Hughes started putting it on her up against the fence, landing some good shots, and then Dudakova basically, I guess, got saved by the bell. And then Sam Hughes was able to, I think, solidify a takedown in that third round. She was the one pushing the pace. She just did better in the later half of the fight, which ended up getting her the split decision win. Now, I'm okay with the split decision, all right? I did score it for Sam Hughes. I didn't want to be like biased to play into it, but one of the judges scored it 30-27 for Dudakova. He needs to be probed for gambling because that is insane. That's an insane scorecard. You can't give her the second round. The third round was up in the air, and that's why I was okay with a split decision. It could have gone either way, but a 30-27 for Victoria Dudakova is insanity. That judge needs to be fired. He needs to be investigated for gambling on these fights. I don't know what he was watching, but Victoria Dudakova did not win all three of those rounds. Sam Hughes gets it done and gives Dudakova her first loss in professional MMA. Next up, we had Guram Kutateladze going up against Jordan Vucenic, and this fight it wasn't surprising because we knew how dangerous Vucenic can be. Vucenic, I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce it just yet, but we'll get there. He came in and dropped Kutateladze in that first round. I was super worried because Kutateladze was one of my high confidence picks. And typically I do like 2, 3, or 4 high confidence picks depending on these specific matchups, obviously in these specific fight cards, and I parlay them all together. I ended up winning my high confidence pick parlay this week. It ended up having 4 fighters in it, and we will get that through. We'll get to that throughout this video. But number 1 was Kutateladze because I understand the danger factor of Vucenic, but Kutateladze is also just as dangerous, and he is the more technical fighter with great takedown defense, which would help him against somebody like Vucenic, who typically works his striking on his opponent, gets him thinking about those hands, and then he works in those takedowns. He was able to drop Kutateladze in that first round, and it was looking scary. I'm not going to lie, because I was pretty high on Kutateladze this week. I understood the danger factor of Vucenic, but Vucenic just fought July 20th, so this is extremely short notice. He had to fly all the way to Abu Dhabi, barely had a training camp, but he looked great in that first round. Second round, Guram started picking it up. He landed the better shots. It was a few hours ago, so I don't remember exactly what happened, but Guram kind of woke up in that second round, started pushing the pace, and I personally thought he got the second round. Third round, more of the same. He was able to garner some back control time on the mat near the end of the fight. Vucenic was able to garner some clinch control time, but ultimately Kutateladze did a great job with the takedown defense. He finally got his hands going after that first round and ended up securing a 29-28 unanimous decision victory over a short notice Vucenic. In the breakdown, we did say that, I was talking about Vucenic. I think he is going to have a good career in the UFC. He has that danger factor and he has the skills to back it up. But this was a little bit too much, too fast, short notice against a killer like Guram, who honestly isn't really looking like a killer lately because he got broken down by Brener. In this fight, he got dropped in that first round. So I'm happy Kutateladze got the win, but it is kind of concerning moving forward. And regardless, I'll be excited to see what Vucenic has in store in the UFC. So we ended up getting that one correct as well. Let's keep moving on. Shamil Gaziev against Dontel Mays. Now, this fight was basically Shamil just laying on top of Dontel Mays for the majority of the fight. Shamil had some good striking on the feet as well. Mays kind of looked lost anywhere the fight went. He landed a few clean shots, I guess. He had a couple of uppercuts, I think, that landed on Gaziev, but Gaziev was able to land the better strikes, more impactful strikes, and he was able to solidify those takedowns and garner lots of control time on Dontel Mays and ended up going all 3 rounds. And the reason why that kind of surprised me was as soon as Mays got taken down and was on his back on the mat, it seemed like Gaziev could have locked in an arm triangle choke literally at any point in that fight. He just never ended up going for it. So I don't know if Gaziev wanted to prove a point because of his last fight where he gassed out in 35 seconds. and to say, hey, look, I can dominate my opponent for 15 straight minutes and not gas out. I don't know if it was like a point he was trying to prove, but it seemed like he could have arm triangle choked Mays literally at any time of this fight. Decided not to. Ends up getting the unanimous decision victory. I was not confident on the Gaziev side because Mays does have power. He's a big human being, and Gaziev did not look great against Jairzinho Rozenstruik, but there is levels to this game. Jairzinho Rozenstruik is way better than the Dontel Mays. Mays is like bottom of the barrel kind of skill level, and Gaziev did exactly what he needed to do to get back into that win column. Good win for him, and so far we've only gotten one fight wrong, and that was the Bedoya fight. Next up, Muhammad Yahya against Kawe Fernandes. We had Kawe Fernandes by KO because I just thought he was the better overall fighter. He was faster, sharper on the feet. He's a very kick-heavy, kick-friendly kind of style, and he utilized that very effectively in this fight. He chopped away at Yahya's legs early on. It seemed like Yahya couldn't handle leg kicks whatsoever. Hurt him there, and then eventually ended up putting him away in that first round. Great win for Fernandes. It's kind of upsetting, I guess, it could be kind of upsetting for the Abu Dhabi fans because Yahya was a highly touted prospect coming in. He is from Abu Dhabi as well, and they had to watch him get absolutely sparked in that first round. So great win for Fernandes. We keep rolling with the dubs. Next up was the light heavyweight clash, Azamat Murzakanov against Alonzo Menifield. We had Murzakanov in this fight. My official pick, I don't know if I said it on the video, but I have a book that I write everything down. I did have Murzakanov to get the knockout because I thought it'd be too quick of a turnaround for Menifield after getting knocked out by Ulberg in like 12 seconds, not even 3 months ago. And even though Menifield is a powerful dude, he's an absolute tank, and his fighting style is power-based. Whenever he's throwing heavy, and whenever he's going for takedowns, it's all physically, I don't know the wording, but he does everything through sheer power. And I picked Murzakanov because he also has power, which we saw because he got that second round KO, but Murzakanov was just the more technical striker that also had power, and that was clearly evident throughout this fight. Murzakanov was able to basically do whatever he wanted on the feet against Menifield. Menifield really didn't have any significant moments throughout this fight, and Murzakanov was just absolutely piecing him up. He ended up getting a second round finish, and it was a great win for him. He really showed why he is undefeated. And even though he has been off for over a year, I believe, mending a broken arm after the Jacoby fight, I believe. I think it was the Jacoby fight. Regardless, Murzakanov gets the second round KO, puts away Menifield, and we keep it rolling. I think this is the first fight on the main card, and what a fight it was. Joel Alvarez going up against Elves Brener. Joel Alvarez stalked Brener the entire time. Every second of this fight, Alvarez was just walking forward, not wasting any energy through unnecessary movements. He was just plodding forward, and Elves Brener was kind of like throwing out all these weird movements, trying to confuse Alvarez, and Alvarez wasn't having any of it. He was just locked in, just not doing any unnecessary movements, not wasting any energy, and he did end up getting that third round finish, which is fantastic because Brener has never been finished before. And typically in an Elves Brener fight, he gets shit kicked for the first 2 rounds. Then somehow his durability and toughness comes through, and he just ends up putting it on his opponent in that third round. But Joel Alvarez, I guess, realized this. He didn't want to blow his load early and then have that same fate that Brener's previous opponents have faced, a.k.a. Kutateladze. But Joel Alvarez looked sharp. He looked clean. His striking was phenomenal. And like I said, he was just stalking Elves Brener for that entire fight. He looked really dangerous. And he was also out of the octagon for about over a year, but he did not look out of place whatsoever. Joel Alvarez, El Fenomeno, I think is his nickname, and for good reason. That was a phenomenal performance for Joel Alvarez, and we continue with the wins. We are 8 fights deep on the card, and we still only got the Bedoya fight incorrect, but I think the losses they're going to start building up soon. So great finish for Joel Alvarez. He maintains his 100% finish rate in the win column. He now has 4 KO TKO victories and 17 submissions in his career. Next up, Mackenzie Dern versus Lupita Godinez. Now, Mackenzie Dern ends up getting a 29-28 unanimous decision victory, and I don't want to sound biased, but I thought it could have went with Godinez. I'm shocked it wasn't a split decision, and the reason why I say that was because I'll give round 1 to Mackenzie Dern because of the grappling situation. Even though she was on bottom, she was threatening that armbar, I believe, on Godinez, and she was landing hammer fists and punches on Godinez, which was the most significant part of round 1, and there wasn't really anything on the Godinez side that you could kind of sway in her direction for that first round. Now, throughout the rest of the fight in that second and third rounds, Dern didn't really do anything super significant. Yes, she was pushing the pace forward, and she was throwing out volume. I think she was able to get maybe 1 or 2 takedowns as well, but she didn't really dominate she didn't do much when she got those takedowns. And Godinez, even though Dern was the one moving forward and throwing out probably just as much volume, Godinez was outstriking her, all right? And on top of that, every single time Godinez touched Mackenzie Dern with a strike, Mackenzie does some weird flailing stuff when she gets hit, and it is not visually appealing whatsoever. So in my opinion, when you see that, if I was to be a judge, that would be like, wow, that's affecting her more than when Dern is landing on Godinez. Not to mention, like I said, Godinez was outlanding and outstriking Dern as well. So it's just shocking to me. And this was the case for the second and the third round. Yes, there were some grappling exchanges that Dern was able to force on Godinez, but she didn't really do much with them. So I don't know. Like I said, I don't want to sound biased because I did have Godinez here, but I disagree with the 29-28. If it was a split decision, I would understand. But for all 3 judges to not see the fight at all be on the Godinez side was kind of interesting to me. Maybe I'll rewatch the fight. Maybe there's something I missed. But from what I saw, Lupita was outlanding Dern and was landing the more significant and visually appealing strikes. Regardless, Dern gets it done. Let's move on to the next one. Poor Tony Ferguson against Michael Chiesa. Yes, I was one of the doofuses that picked Tony Ferguson to get this done because Michael Chiesa has been subbed 5 times. Tony Ferguson, a grappling and submission specialist in his career, but like I mentioned in my breakdown video, Tony Ferguson of old is not the current Tony Ferguson, and I kind of Michael Chiesa hadn't won for 3 years. Tony, yes, I know, was on a 7-fight, now an 8-fight losing streak, but I did have faith in El Cucuy to get it done. He looked like shit. He wasn't able to do much on the feet, and as soon as Chiesa got it to the ground, he just looked like the way stronger, more physically imposing guy and just snuck in a choke, got it done. And one of the things I actually didn't realize, even though I made the graphic, I broke down the fight, I didn't realize this was at welterweight. Tony Ferguson's a lightweight. Michael Chiesa was clearly physically stronger, and that ended up being the biggest factor in this fight. So yes, I was one of the doofuses. You guys can chirp me all you want. I thought Ferguson would be able to latch up a neck or latch up a sub of some sort, but Tony Ferguson now 8-fight losing streak. I really hope he packs it in. This is getting really sad at this point. I do not want to see Tony Ferguson fight ever again. Next up, the featured fight of the night. We had Marlon Chito Vera against Deiveson Figueiredo. Now, this fight, to me, came down to that knockdown in the third round for Figueiredo. The first round, you can give Figgy because Marlon didn't really do anything significant on the feet, and Figueiredo was able to land those takedowns and garner some control and do some damage on the mat. So round 1 goes to Chito. Round 1 goes to Figueiredo. Round 2 goes to Chito. He was able to stuff every takedown from Deiveson Figueiredo in that second round. He was outlanding Figgy in that round, and he landed the more significant strikes. It was looking good. It was 1-1. And typically, Chito gets better throughout the fight. So I was like, nice. Let's go, Chito. I'm a big Chito fan, so I wanted to see him get this dub and bounce back from that Sean O'Malley loss. But we go into the third round. Again, Chito was shaking off those takedowns. threatened a guillotine early on in that first round to get Figgy off of him. He was landing the better strikes, landing more strikes once again against Figgy. And that was the case throughout the rest of the round. But Figgy was keeping up with the numbers, and he landed that big right hand that put Cheeto on his ass. And I truly believe that was the distinguishing factor to give Figueiredo the win. Great win for Figgy. He's looked good since he moved up to 135, and even though he is quite small, and you can see the size discrepancy in this specific matchup, he doesn't look out of place. The guy looks good at 135. This is 3 wins in a row for him now in the new weight class. So at 36 years old, I hope he gets his title shot soon, because typically in these lighter weight classes, the older you get, obviously, for any fight, you get worse. But for these lighter weight classes, 35 plus is kind of pushing it. So he's 36 right now. I don't know when he turns 37. Regardless, 3-0 in bantamweight now. I'm excited to see what's next for him. It's always sad to see Cheeto lose because he's a great dude, great fighter. But we'll see what's next for both of these guys. Great win for Figgy. Let's move on to the co-main event. Shara Bullet Magomedov against Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. Now, this fight, the reason why I didn't have Magomedov as one of my most confident, I guess I didn't even talk about the most confident parlay thing that I said I was going to talk about, but we'll go back. We'll backtrack a bit. Anyway, Magomedov, clearly the more technical striker. This guy loves throwing out that side kick. He loves kicks in general, and he looked way better than he did in Saudi Arabia against a more dangerous fighter. So I don't know if he needs, I don't know if he's one of those guys that plays down to the level of his opponent, but he looked much better in this fight than he did against Antonio Tricoli, who is not even comparable to Oleksiejczuk. Oleksiejczuk, it looked like he dropped Magomedov in that first round, but I don't know if it was more of like a stumble or a trip after getting hit on the Magomedov side. But regardless, Magomedov pieced up Oleksiejczuk this entire fight. Yes, Oleksiejczuk was able to land some good shots on Magomedov as well, but the volume and the power of Magomedov seemed to give problems to McCall. I think he got cut open on his forehead in the first round, so he was a bloody mess throughout this fight. And McCall was landing takedowns and trying to grapple because I don't know if he was gassed out and he couldn't throw or he didn't want to eat any more of these shots from Magomedov. But that is one glaring hole that we've noticed since Magomedov has entered the UFC in that Bruno Silva fight, and it's something he really does need to work on, because if Mikhail Oleksiejczuk is landing 3+ takedowns on you, that is not good, because the moment you go up against anybody that is capable of wrestling or has the most minor amount of wrestling ability, they are going to exploit it, and Magomedov really needs to brush up on that takedown defense. But his striking is beautiful to watch, very technical. He throws out all 4 limbs, knees. He does great clinch work as well. His kicks are phenomenal, and I'm just excited to watch him fight more and more. And typically, because the people were saying that he can't fight in the U.S. because he's missing an eye, and I don't know if it depends on the athletic commission of each particular state in the U.S., but I'm assuming that they're going to keep him out in the Middle East, and there is a pay-per-view in Abu Dhabi in October, so hopefully they can find an opponent for him, because if we get to watch him one more time before the end of 2024, that would be great. He always provides fun, exciting striking matches for us to watch. So Shara gets it done. A unanimous decision. The fact that this went all 3 rounds was kind of shocking. I don't think anybody would have guessed that, because both of these fighters are like feast or famine. Well, I don't want to say that for Shara because he's never lost, but typically he looks for those finishes. McCall definitely looks for those finishes, and if he doesn't get a finish, he typically gets finished. But regardless, Magomedov gets it done. Let's move on to the main event of the evening. Corey Sandhagen against Umar Nurmagomedov. We had Nurmagomedov to get it done. He was not a most confident pick for me, because I understand the danger that Corey Sandhagen brings on the feet, and his evolution in the wrestling has been evident in his past few fights. So I wasn't too high up on Nurmagomedov. When this fight was initially announced, I actually was on the Corey Sandhagen side, but come fight week, I did more research, broke it down more, and I did have Nurmagomedov to win, and he ended up getting a unanimous decision victory. One of the judges had it 50-45. I disagree with that. I think it was 49-46. You have to give Corey that first round. Corey did a fantastic job with the takedown defense throughout this entire fight, especially in that first round. Nurmagomedov was not able to really settle in that first round. He seemed kind of jittery. It seemed like the nerves got the better of him, but Corey was able to shake off those takedowns and land the better strikes in round 1. But after that, Umar kind of ran away with it. He won the last 4 rounds, shockingly enough, with that striking. He looked good with his in and outs. Corey was able to land some nice leg kicks throughout the fight, and even though he had the reach and length advantage, Umar was the one that was throwing out nice straight shots and getting out of danger better than Sandhagen was. So I don't know if Sandhagen was like hesitant because he didn't want to get taken down. Whatever the case was, Umar looks like a problem, and yes, he has looked like a problem since he entered the UFC, but being able to beat somebody like Corey Sandhagen in the way that he did in those last 4 rounds is very scary for this bantamweight division, because Corey Sandhagen is a tricky striker, and the fact that Umar was able to keep up, if not do a little bit better on the feet than Corey Sandhagen, is an issue, considering not many people can keep up with him in the grappling. So it was nice to see how Umar does against that next level of competition. This guy's going to move from 10th in the bantamweight division to number 2 or number 3, depending on what they release on the rankings on Monday. But great performance, great dominant, I should say, performance for Nurmagomedov in those last 4 rounds. Like I said, though, Corey did a great job fending off those takedowns. Umar was able to get Corey's back a few times in this fight, but he couldn't mount any sort of threat on the back. Corey did a great job not allowing Umar to get that body lock or get any chokes whatsoever. He was able to get back to his feet multiple times, and even if he gave up his back, he was able to break out of it if he didn't get taken down, and if he did, he didn't allow Umar to mount any sort of control on the mat, which was great to see. Obviously, I'm a fan of both these guys. It was nice to see Umar keep up with Corey on the feet, though. That is going to be a problem for this bantamweight division. I'm excited to see what's next for Umar. I don't know if it'll be a title shot. I wouldn't be surprised if it was. Maybe he's next after Merab. But we'll see how that ends up going. Now, to get back to that parlay I was talking about, we had Guram Kutateladze. You guys can actually check before every event. I go on my Twitter and I do every single pick. I do the full card predictions on my Twitter. I do it through a post, and I also give you my confidence levels. I break it down into 3 tiers: high confidence, moderate, and low confidence. And typically I parlay my high confident picks. And we had Guram Kutateladze, we had Kawi Fernandes, we had Murzakanov, and we had Magomedov. Those were my 4 most. I guess I did have Magomedov in my most confidence pick. I was talking shit earlier, I guess. But regardless, we ended up hitting that. We went 9-4 on the fight night card. I'm pumped we ended up bouncing back. We made a little bit of money as well. But regardless, that's what happened at UFC Abu Dhabi. Make sure you guys hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and comment down below with your thoughts on this event. I'll see you guys in the next video for next week's fight night breakdown and predictions.